So, are you curious?
Welcome to the Curiosity Codex. I am your ardent enthusiast, Kyle Olson. My conversation with Mandy Fabian continues as we dig deep into the world of a writer, including the ideas that haunt us, co-writing, the joys of dialogue, and the ups and downs of adaptation. Plus, we'll find out which of the friends Mandy has worked with. But before that, we're going to talk about her special connection to 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
Chapter 5, The Dream of an Idea.
All right, so before we get into the written word, which of course I'm excited about too, there's a couple things on your IMDb profile that I wanted to ask you about. Two particular acting things. You were on 30 Rock.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, my God. Well, that was like a dream come true because I was such a huge fan of that show. Weird side story. I don't know if I told you about how I went crazy for 6 months and got an audition on Saturday Night Live. Did I tell you that part?
No, I don't know this story.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So I had done sketch comedy my whole life. So it wasn't a complete, outrageous idea that I would audition for Saturday Night Live. And I had sent in my little DVD. And then at the same time, I'd read that little book, The Secret, the one that's all you have to do is imagine it.
Visualize it and put it on the board. And
so I was like, I'm going to do an experiment. And I did The Secret so hard. I booked a plane ticket to New York City. And I told everyone that I had an audition for Saturday Night Live, when in fact I did not.
Did you know anyone who knew anyone who was on the show?
So I had a friend who worked on 30 Rock. I don't remember even what she did. She was, I think, like a PA or something. I don't even remember what she did. Oh, maybe she was a writer's assistant. I don't remember.
Okay.
But she worked with the 30 Rock folks, and so she knew the lady who cast Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
So she got that lady my DVD. I made a character DVD. So it wasn't like completely out of the realm of possibility, except it was because they only ever scout UCB and the Groundlings and, It was a ridiculous thought, and more ridiculous to book a plane ticket and then proceed to tell everyone, with the exception of my fiance at the time, that I was going to go and do an audition for Saturday Night Live. And people go, like, I was on the plane. There's a lady, what are you flying to New York for? I'm like, oh, I'm auditioning for Saturday Night Live. And she'd say, oh, when? And I'd say, soon. And I was there for
as soon as the universe wills it.
And I was there for 6 weeks. And I told my agents and all my friends that I was auditioning for Saturday Night Live. And instead, I got an audition for 30 Rock.
Okay.
Which I was like, oh, well, Saturday Night Live happens in 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Maybe that's it. So I did this tiny little part on 30 Rock. But it was really fun. Steve Buscemi directed it. So I got to watch.
Wow.
Yeah, I got to watch him work. Again, it's like, right, you have a tiny little part, but you get to watch this director all day.
Yeah.
And I got to see the little email where Tina Fey said, Mandy Steckelberg. That was my maiden name. So it was like this really fun little thing of wow, dreams come true and it's all happening at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. But I didn't let it go. And my time in New York ended and I took my plane ticket back to LA and they were like, what about Saturday Night Live? I'm like, it's coming. Just didn't happen this trip, but soon. And I totally held it. And about a week later, after I got back, I got a phone call from the people at Saturday Night Live saying, we want to fly you across the country. We want to test you and we want you to come audition.
Wow.
Yeah.
The power of The Secret. So what was your audition like?
Oh my God, it was a blast. They were looking to replace Amy Poehler. And I'd been doing it for years. So I was super excited. I was nervous as hell. I mean,
well, I would expect so.
But
from what I've heard of the audition stories, it's a very cold room. In terms of there's 4 people in the room. So you have to be on and funny. And there's just a handful of crew. There's no audience. And no one's going to laugh.
They tell you a million times. Yeah. They tell you no one's going to laugh. No one's going to laugh. Now, they actually did laugh. for me.
Oh, hey, all right.
Right. So I was kind of like crushing it. And then my news story was going to be like, I am getting a job on Saturday. I'm now hired by Saturday Night Live, all that stuff. Like, I was like, oh, this is good. I was so excited because they did laugh. They put me in Amy Poehler's dressing room before the audition.
All right. That's already some good karma.
And like, I'm not gonna, I was totally crap my pants nervous, but it was the greatest moment of all I ever wanted to do was perform on that stage. And there I was, they did my hair and makeup and put me on that stage. And I looked down the barrel at the camera and I said my name and I did my characters. And it was a total blast. It was a blast. I loved it. I did not get the job.
Well, I gotta say, it's a spoiler alert. You didn't get the job unless they're have a very long list and you just haven't gotten around to yet. It's
like Harry Potter. It was season 23 and a half that you had to stand on a certain platform at Grand Central to watch the season that I did of Saturday Night Live.
So was Lorne in the room?
I did not meet him specifically. I believe he was in the room, but it's dark.
Right.
But I think I remember them telling me that he was in there.
Okay. Interesting. Did you see any other people who were testing at the same time?
I did not. There was
I'm just curious if they kept you isolated or if there was like a general, like, people moving around.
There were 6 of us. I knew there was one girl from Chicago that I saw, I think, in the dressing room, or the makeup room.
Right.
But I think they kind of kept us isolated. We didn't get to.
Well, it makes sense. I've heard
other stories.
It was like they lined you up and.
No, I've heard stories where, someone's waiting to audition and then they hear the person in front of them. Yeah. Doing their
Killing
bit
it.
somewhat. Yeah. Yeah. But that was not. I was the first one to go. And I did it, and then I left, and that was the day that Barack Obama was elected president. So,
hey,
how could you expect 2 miracles in one day? We got Obama,
right? All the good luck and karma is going a different direction.
Yeah, the nation said yes, we can. Yeah. Saturday Night Live said no, you can't. So, it's fine.
But having the secret and his motivation and coming out with a consolation prize of getting a role on 30 Rock is not too shabby.
No, not bad at all. Most
people can't will themselves into a top 10 show.
It was great. I've had the privilege of having these tiny, tiny little parts in these really big projects, and it's been a joy. I love it. I love being on set. And I don't love acting, though. I love the process of acting, but if you're not number 1 on the call sheet or doing something that really takes, if you're just it's just one of those parts, you're just sitting around waiting for such a long time. And the waiting is really hard for me. That's all.
The other one, the other one that I wanted to pull out was because in that one, in 30 Rock, you got to play woman.
Yeah, woman.
Which, you take what you can get. But
I tried to get shapely woman, but I guess they had already done that previous in the episode. So,
but you actually got to be Susan Kane when you were on Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
This is all a story really about how I'm psychotic.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize these two were thematically linked. I was just excited by the fact that these are big time shows that you got to be on.
I know. It's stupid luck. I had done Dropping the Soap, the web series that I wrote.
Okay. We'll get to that.
Yes, was
I know I'm jumping around in time, but I was just curious.
It's fine. So it was I think I had met Dan Bukatinsky because he was producing it at the time. They were trying to sell it, and I'd met him, and we just got on like a house on fire. It was great, and he was the writer of that episode, and he threw me a bone and was like, "Hey, let's let Mandy come in and audition for this," but I couldn't come in for the audition.
Oh.
Because I was leaving town, and it was one of those things where I was like, I can't move my flight. I have to go. So I cannot come audition for this. So I was like, I have tape. I've done things I can send.
I was woman on 30 Rock. Do you not know my history?
I literally sent a couple, I had done a tiny little web series thing, and I sent them a couple episodes of that.
You sent them your reel.
And I said to somebody earlier, I was like, I'm offer only. If they want me, I was like, I've decided.
Well,
No, but this is why. I was like, the way that I'm actually going to quit acting is say that I'm offer only, because then I'll never get an offer, and that way the career I don't actually have
like,
to.
They just haven't met my quote yet.
Exactly. I don't ever actually have to quit. I just have to make my standards so high that no one will ever meet them, and then we can just call it a truce. Like, I didn't quit, but they also wouldn't hire me because I was offer only. And then so I made this joke that like, well, now I'm offer only, and then I get this audition that I can't make, and I send in my tape. I'm like, I can't, and they offered it to me.
Wow, you must have a hell of a good reel.
Why can't I just make that like,
every time?
Every time I should just be an uppity asshole and be like, you're going to do this for me, and it'll work out. So
what? So did you have a medical malady? Like, what was your? Did you have something stuck into you? Like, were you impaled on something? Like, what was your medical problem?
It was so fun. I did not have a medical problem, thank God. I'm not a cry on cue person. I was a mom to a little girl who was having medical issues, but it wasn't like a sad medical issues, because the issue was with her brother, who was a super brat, and we were parents who were very like, we don't say no, we say. It was so fun, to be the kid. Like, I think the little kid like shot a doctor in the face with a dart gun, and I had to be like, hands are for hugging, not for hitting, that kind of thing.
Yes, I know that type.
I loved it so much. I love playing those characters. It was a blast. Yeah, I got really lucky, and I got to meet Patrick Dempsey.
Who were you doing the scenes with?
I don't remember the name. I didn't do a scene with Patrick Dempsey.
I just say Grey's Anatomy has been on a long time, and they've gone through a lot of actors, so I totally understand. You might even say the name, and I'll go, okay. Like, I think I stopped watching it. It's like season 8 or something. So
yeah. Is it still going, or did it? I think
it's still going. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, everybody was like a good, tight family on that set. They've been doing it forever, so it's just like clockwork.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the name of the actress who I had the scene with. I don't remember. Isn't that terrible?
Okay. You've been through a lot, and it's at this point here, as we're recording in 2021, I don't begrudge anybody memory stuff, because last year has turned my memory to tapioca. Like, anything from the before times, I just kind of go, just sure. Like, this is why we have IMDb. This is why we have on-demand stuff. You can just go back and watch and go, oh, yeah, that's who it was.
Well, there is that, right? Yeah. None of us have to remember anything, so.
I don't expect perfect recall from anyone.
Well, and I always I hardly ever remember. I hardly ever remember the names of actors or actresses. I've always been the person, like, I grew up on a ranch, so there's a part of me that I'm like, I think I still live on a ranch. I'm always like, it's a little bit like, if the information gets to me, then it's important, That's right. I don't go seek it. Like, and it's great too for being an independent filmmaker, because I know when someone's famous, because if I know about them, they're famous. I don't do deep dives,
Right. Yeah. And that also means that you're not prejudiced against somebody when you come up together, because if you don't know them, then you're not thinking like by their previous work.
That's true.
Like you can just evaluate them on like, are you going to be a real jerk on my set?
That's true. That is true. Yes.
Okay, so those are the two I just wanted to pull. I mean, I'm sure other stuff will come up, but as I was looking through the list, those are the ones that I wanted to bring. Okay, so when we last left, you had written a office spec.
Oh,
and it was the first time you had actually sat down and put pen to paper.
Yeah.
And so now that got sent around, and so that got you work, or did you just like go, oh, this is fun, I'm going to start working on something now, or did someone say, hey, write a thing for me?
It was it was how I learned to be a writer instead of dreaming of being a writer.
Right. Were you dreaming of being a writer? That doesn't happen very often.
I know, right?
Most people are just like, it's an affliction.
Well, oh God, right? No,
because if I could not do it, There's lots of easier jobs out there.
Oh, yeah. I just heard a podcast where Tina Fey, did we talk about this? Where Tina Fey said there's nothing fun about writing. The only fun part of writing is when it's finished.
Yeah. Paul F. Tompkins has said, like, basically, having written feels fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Writing is terrible.
The worst. Yeah. I don't know why I decided to take it on, except I guess I try to do everything that's hard and makes you miserable. No, I actually had written half of, did I tell you this? I had written half of it. And I asked my husband, I was like, who was not my husband at the time. I was like, do I have to write the rest or can I like just send somebody? And I meant it completely seriously. Like, that's how deluded I was. I was like, I'm sure I'm a writer. I mean, I'm a good writer. Like, people should just know that. I'm so creative, you know?
Yeah, they'll read my segment and go, oh, clearly she's got it.
I mean, right? I literally was like, well, I could send a portion of a script. That would be plenty. And he was like, no, you have to write an entire beginning, middle, and an end. Yeah. And so I was like, oh. So, I did, as the first time I really like did the hard work of this is not just an idea and it's not just a sketch and it's not just a dream of an idea. It's an idea that you're going to take the idea and then you are going to go look at office scripts and see how they structure everything. And you're going to watch a bazillion episodes of the show and see how they do it. And then you're going to write the words, in the structure that they do it, and then you're going to go back and rewrite it, and then you're going to get more notes and you're going to rewrite it again. And that was my first time really doing that process.
Yeah, I remember doing the same thing. And I got to the point where I could feel the rhythms because after you do it a couple times, you start to go, oh, I see. This is like this one-off joke. Okay, this is setting stuff up for later. And it doesn't wreck it for you, but at the same time, you get sensitive to the commercial break. Like you basically can feel when something is wrapping up or when you're getting to a beat. So much so that when something breaks that form, it wakes me up. Like when a show does something, all of a sudden they take a left turn. I go, oh, hold on. Like
that's really cool. Now, are you a structure baby? Like, do you get structure?
No, for me, it's all instinctual in terms of like, I feel like I've consumed thousands of hours of it, that I feel the rhythm more than I actually like have to outline or anything. Like I wish I could. I wish I took notes. I wish I had journals. I wish I could outline, but I don't. I basically just sort of have I feel like just because I've warped my brain by watching thousands of hours of sitcoms and movies and terrible television shows that I could just kind of feel it. And I found that I actually overcompensate because I get tired of it way sooner than I probably should. Where I'm like, I am bored with this scene. Something should happen now.
Oh, now, okay. But I have a question for you. So you don't outline.
I don't outline. I really wish I did, but I don't.
Well, I didn't when I first started either. But when I don't outline, it turns into a bit of a first idea, best idea scenario, right? Because you sort of have to take your idea and then you follow that down and then it unfolds in that way, which can be really fun, stream of consciousness. Like, but then I found that if my first idea wasn't my best idea, now I have to unpack and reverse an entire script and undo an entire written thing. Whereas what I learned with outlining, even though I hate it because it's no fun, but what I learned with outlining was you get to have that process where you go, well, he could ask her to marry him and then it would play out like this and you sort of can dream about that. And then you go, or he could break up with her and, go out with this girl. And then you can sort of play that out and weigh options before you get all entangled in dialogue and scenes and,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. I think, everybody has to find their own thing and I don't want to find their own method and I don't want to have the impression to anyone listening that I just go, I have a brilliant idea and I can just sit down and write an entire script because that's not what it is. I basically plan everything in my head but when I write, I sort of just like let the chaos happen. But this is where it gets weird. So my storytelling training comes from Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh,
so I was a dungeon master since I played a bunch of different role playing games. Actually, I did more stuff in the Storyteller system, Vampire the Masquerade, for those of you nerds out there. But so I was sort of be the game master in terms of like I would run the story and then everyone else was the characters. So what I had to learn was I could set up plot and I could carry NPCs, but the characters were going to do whatever they were going to do, and I had to react to it. So I could plan all I wanted, but if I had a monster down the hallway and they never go down the hallway, well, then I still have to tell a story and be interesting in them. So the sort of what I learned from that is that because there's a certain amount of chaos of the characters are going to do what they're going to do, even when I'm writing them. So I try to have a rough plot in terms of like, I know where they're going. Like it's the roadmap thing. So like we're starting in New York, we're going to Los Angeles. I have 10 stops along the way, but I don't know exactly what the route is going to be. I only know the stops they're going to make along the way.
Okay.
So I sort of just then I develop my characters. I have them like what their conflicts are and everything. And I just sort of let them loose and I just kind of transcribe what they do.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, that's just the method that has worked for me. And sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, sometimes I have written myself into corners or written and go, oh, yeah, I don't know where the hell I'm supposed to go now. Like I'm off the map. I don't know what happened. So I have to, retrace and do that and revise and stuff, too. But this is what I found is basically I just sort of listen and then let them sort of tell me where they want to go, or I throw something at them until they go the way I want them to.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think that's interesting because I had like Killing Vivian was a short film that I did that I had no idea how it was going to end. I only knew the premise of it. Okay. And I had an idea of how to set up the premise and then how to heighten the premise, but I really didn't know how it ended. And then it actually has this great twist at the end that I love, but it was really, truly one of those like, as I was writing it, I couldn't believe it, Yeah. Which is really fun. But then there's there's a different short film I did called You're Breaking Up, where the whole movie was built to go to that ending. Like I knew the ending and then I went backwards and said, okay, if that's where we're ending up, how do we get there? So I guess
and have it so that people don't know where they're going to. So the characters don't know where they're going to end up or the audience. Yeah,
because it's really, there's always surprises. Even if you outline things, you have surprises because you don't know a character's going to say something like that or,
Yeah.
I like stream of consciousness writing. I really do. I feel like there's a lot of magic in it. And it's more likely to give you that thing you're talking about, the thing that sort of is a twist on the old formula.
Yeah. I even something I was writing today. As I was sitting there, I sort of usually before I start, of course, I do everything I possibly can to stop myself from starting. That's just part of the procedure. Like, laundry. Oh, I need to finish. Oh, I gotta send this email. Like 100 things will come up before I can sit down, even when I have dedicated time to writing, because the brain doesn't want to do it.
No,
you have to get it going. And I just sat quietly and I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to accomplish in the scene? Who's in it? What are they going to say? And I came up with I'm like, oh, that is a really good line. I've never heard that in anything before. That has to go there. And I wrote the entire scene and I was like, whew, and at the end, nailed it, walked away. And I'm like, I didn't put the line in. I didn't put the line in the scene. Like I had a one line. I'm like, ooh, that's good. I'm going to build to that. Boom, it's going to hit. And then we're going to go out. And I never put it in the scene. And now I have to go back and I'm like, all right, let me find an organic way to put this brilliant thing that I thought of in the scene. But
do you need to put it in there, or is it one of those
maybe
things?
Not.
Yeah,
maybe not. But it's like either I'm just going to hold it and put it somewhere else because I'm like, ooh, I like that. File it away.
That's interesting. Yeah, I have a couple of those ideas that I go,
yeah, right.
They're not even novel ideas, but I don't write this sort of thing. So if this works for you, feel free to take it. But I've always wanted to write something where, the reveal is that there's somebody getting a woman who's looking for a criminal, right? She's been hunting down this guy forever. And then she goes to take a break because she's been so stressed and, her boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever takes her away and she goes and gets a massage and has this whole conversation with her massage therapist. And then at the end, when he says thank you, and leaves, she opens her eyes and the guy who's been massaging her is the guy she's been looking for forever and ever.
Oh,
right. Because that's such a weird situation where sometimes you don't see you don't see the person before they come in and they massage you.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. To build up that she's just so frustrated that she's been tracking, can't find it. I know it's in this area. I know that he's a medical,
and she just gives up. And then turns out, I'm just gonna go.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me one time. I was telling somebody about this magical story that I'd started to write. I didn't know really where it was going. They did not know this, but it was a real like children's fantasy, cool. Like I was writing it as a novella. It was just a beautiful story, but I didn't know how it was going to end. And as I was sort of telling where I was in the story, one of my friends is like, oh yeah. And then it ends up that she goes home and she was there all along or whatever, she said the thing and I was like, yes. Yeah. Yeah. That is actually how it ends. Yep. I was just thinking that, and yep, that's what we're gonna do.
So when you said when you had started to do your first, was it a short or was it a feature that you were gonna do that you ended up writing with someone else?
Oh, I did the Office spec alone, and the first feature I did on my own. And that's when I discovered that,
that's a marathon.
Holy God. I mean, I took a class, like I took one of those boot camp classes and, suffered through being a lonely, frustrated writer. I came up with something that is it's the screenplay of that novella, that children's fantasy novella that I wrote. Okay. And I wrote a screenplay because I loved it so much. I really like that piece. And, so that I did that, but I didn't, it was not a genre that I'm going to repeat. It was kind of a one-off Harry Potter-ish kind of thing, but my brain doesn't usually work that way. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? Get an agent as a children's fantasy writer and then be like, oh, I don't actually write any other children's fantasy.
Surprise. Just had one idea.
It was just
Here
that
it is.
one, actually, so,
it's your catcher in the rye. You're just like, then I'm out.
Man, see ya.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I could have come up with something, but like, I'm so not. Yeah. Anyway. So then, so my roommate at the time, was working on a piece that it was an idea that she had sort of kicked around with some people in New York. It was one of those like, hey, I have a house we could use. Let's write a story that we could shoot in that house.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they came up with like a sibling dynamic, and it was all about the mom selling the house. And then she was working on that. And then it was kind of, she was sort of like needing some,
some conflict, some structure.
Yeah,
what I like to call the crunchy bits.
Some inspiration. She was like, I'm a little stuck. And so she was like, I think I'm going to try to find a writer to help me with this. And I was still really more heavily an actor at the time. And I was like, let me take a look at it. And like, I'd love to, I'm happy to talk to you about it if it's something that, it totally caught my imagination on fire. And I would be like, oh, what about this? What about that? What about, no, don't do that. Do this. And we totally would stay up late talking about this in our kitchen. And finally I was helping her to write her script, going, sending her long questions about each character and like, answer this and what's her thing, and just really, really helping her write it. But then she was like, I'm not writing this. We are writing this because this has been our process. And like, there was my family in there and her family. So we wrote a script about a mom who, like an eccentric mother who was dying. And then she decided to throw herself a living funeral to try to bring her estranged children back together again. And we both have, like I said, put our mothers are combined to make this mother, and our siblings are combined to make these siblings. And so it's a really fun thing. And that was the first thing that I co-wrote with somebody. And
that I have not done. So tell me a little bit about that process. Like, how did you determine, did you break the story together and then you divvied out scenes or what? Like what was the actual writing process work?
Well, so she had written 60 pages of stuff, but it wasn't exactly the story that we were coming up with together. So I was like, keep this, and we'll keep all that and we'll put that in the new thing. And then we just sort of really took out the bits that didn't work and then came up with the bits that did. And I think I'm pretty sure we outlined, we'll have this scene, then we'll have that. And really, really,
for collaboration, you almost would have to.
Yes, 100%.
Just so both of you can keep in time where you are.
Yeah, it wasn't like an official interior lobby. It was, you know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
okay, here's the story beat.
John comes home and finds out that,
Yeah.
it's like one little slug line, essentially.
We had a lot of stuff that wasn't, a lot of it was character. Like, so we knew, and this is how I always approach movies. I do a lot of every character matters to me. And you always want to get very clear about like where they are at the beginning and where they are at the end, right? So that was the thing we had to figure out. Like, so here's who Sam is at the beginning of the movie. Who is she at the end of the movie? Here is, every character, where are they at the beginning and what do they get from the end and what gets them there? What are the scenes or moments that propel them or change them? And so less plot driven, although there's plot obviously, but really more like the plot is derived from what's going to change the character. And so we did all that work. And then, so we knew we had to have a scene where this changes Sam's mind about blah, 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 or, and we did all that. And then once we were done with that, I took a crack at the first pass and I just wrote the thing. And then I passed it to her. And then she rewrote the thing and put, she would add scenes or change things or whatever. And then once we had done that, I think we did that like maybe 3 or 4 times, passing it back like that. And then we would do the hard work of sitting down together. I think we had readings and things, but I don't like the sitting down together. Some people are able to really parse that work out. Like one person just talks and the other one types.
Yeah.
I think that's a good dynamic. We did not do that. We both typed and we were both meticulous about whether something should be a the or an and.
Oh, yes.
And that made it a lot harder, but worth it. Like we both felt really strongly about every word that was on that page, but it took a while to get us both there because we were both so opinionated about it,
Did you get into, I won't say fight, but did you get into did it get intense? Did you get to the point where the two of you were like, not yelling, but like really strongly, like this should be in, this should be out on something?
We were very...
And how did you work through that, I guess, is the
Yeah, I mean, we were very passionate, but the truth is, like, at the end of the day, when you have a partner, right, like, it's easy to put in things that don't work great when you're on your own because you figure, I'll get to it later, or, talk about you have to have better ideas. Like, writers don't just get to have one idea.
Right.
If that first idea, if somebody doesn't like it, they want you to change it, or 3 out of 4 people don't think it's funny, then, I think I told you the story where my friend said, well, don't you have any other ideas? Well, right. I was so offended that somebody didn't like the most brilliant thing I'd ever written. She's like, just come up with something else. And I'm like, what? But that is the job, right? So for us, it was like, if we didn't both love it, then neither of us would bend. So everything in that script had to be something that we either both loved like crazy or we didn't hate it so much, or, it was like 6 of 1, like that we were fine with it. Anything that we don't like doesn't end up in the script. So that's how that works with a partner. And a lot of times it pushes you to come up with better things.
True. Yeah. Say having sort of an audience right there.
Yeah, because, if,
does this work? Right.
If you don't think it works and I love it and I think it's the best thing ever, look, somebody doesn't think it works. So there's a possibility then that doesn't work. So you have to find the thing that works for both of you.
Now, are you monogamous when it comes to scripting?
No.
Are you a single project person, or while you're collaborating with her, were you also writing something on the side? I
was always writing a gazillion things at once, and I don't recommend it, but I really don't. But that is what I did because I was, I really was crazy about my ideas. I wanted to do all of them, and I also did not have just one writing partner.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. I wrote something with Mandy Kaplan.
Oh, okay.
I love the script we wrote together. And that was the thing where, we can't agree on any idea ever. So we never agree on anything. So coming up with, which is funny because I think she's hilarious and she thinks that, and we respect and love each other. But every idea she has, I'm like, "Meh," and every idea she'd be like, like we hated each other's ideas. So we came up with one idea that we both went, oh, and it was so good that we both wanted to do it. And miraculously, we did.
And you didn't kill each other.
No. I mean, almost. But because we're so different.
So then you did two different sort of writing relationships. Yeah. What did you find were the differences between them?
Mandy was not as like, she was okay with me being a little more like, I wanted to say it like this, she was a little more flexible with that stuff. And we were writing two totally different things. Like,
sure. One's more drama, one's more comedy.
Yeah. One was a very character driven character arc, how they develop over time. And the other one is like just a flat out fun comedy. The characters are very sketchy and broad, but like I love this movie, and I still hope someday that we get to make it.
Okay. So you get that in your back pocket. So next time,
so
Hollywood comes calling, you can be like,
yeah, we were just making each other laugh and being stupid, and then trying to also crack the code of what makes a good movie, like looking at other movies like this and going, okay, how is this similar to Wedding Crashers? Or, we looked at a lot of classic comedy, our favorite comedies, and looked like, okay, where are they by minute 20, and how do they do buddy comedies? Because ours is a buddy comedy, so we really looked at like, where do they have their Dark Night of the Soul? What are the things, how, and then we also, even though neither of us, once again, it's an action comedy.
Oh, okay.
Which is crazy, right? Because I'm like, I do about as many of those as I do children's fantasy. But you get an idea and you go, oh, it comes to you and you're like, well, this is it. This is the one I'm doing.
Now, at the time, and much more so than now, you were a writer/actor.
Yeah.
So were you thinking of roles for yourself in either of these things, or were you just like, the story is the story?
That's interesting. I always, like when I'm coming up with characters, they get written in my voice, right? Like, I mean, as a comedian, you have a specific voice and way that you do things. So I think you always write jokes and things in a way that you would deliver, that you would think is funny. Like we would be acting out these scenes in character with each other. And there was one character that was definitely Mandy, and there was one that was definitely me. And like, there was a best friend character that I had added to the other one that was totally me. And like an actual situation from my life that we added into the movie that I just thought was hysterical and added this whole storyline. So I never dreamed that I would get to do them, because we imagined that they would be made and that there would be famous people doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember listening to Jane Espenson, who's one of my favorite writers. She was talking about writing on Once Upon a Time, the television series that was on ABC. And she said, one of the challenges is they're all fairy tale characters. So she's like, how does Snow White tell a joke?
Oh, wow. Right.
And so it's sort of one of those things where like an interesting challenge, but then she was like, because there's a very different structure for different people. She says, you can write a funny line, but the way Sandra Bullock delivers it is different than the way that Angelina Jolie would deliver it. Mm-hmm. So you have to write for the performer. And I always thought of that too. Like, oh yeah, like my sense of humor is one thing, but the specific way I structure the thing, not everybody can do what I want them to do. So I have to make it work for other people who aren't me. Even because you're every character and yet you're none of them. So you have to like have it accessible for other people. So it's not just like, I make myself laugh.
Yeah. And I think it's really tricky to actually make sure that I think the clarity of what each character is trying to accomplish and what their relationships are and how they're changing, and like all those really rich details keep you from writing someone who just sounds like every other character in your movie, right? Like if you have a strong voice, it can be very dangerous to sort of that everybody just talks the same. And that's not how people talk. But you know, what's interesting too is like the movie that I just did, there are people who I cast in that movie who talked at a totally different rhythm and pace than I imagined the character talking.
Yeah.
But they really made it their own, you know? So, yeah. So sometimes an actor will come in and transform something like that, right? Like it'll be your jokes and your sense of humor, but somebody else will be doing it from their perspective, and it makes it seem like it's theirs, you know?
Yeah. Or find a joke in a line that was never intended to have one.
Oh my God.
That's just like magic. How did you do that? That was just a boring line to get to the next line, and you found a funny way to say it.
Right?
It just blows my mind.
There's always one joke in there that it gets a big laugh, and I'm still like, I still don't get it. I don't know why that's funny.
Yeah.
And I'll turn to somebody and be like, why is that funny? Because it's just a thing one of the characters says, you know, makes sense to me. And people are like, oh, such a funny joke, you know.
I remember every time that there's a script reading, I always like have my pencil there. And whenever I'm like, oh, here it comes. And then there's no response. I always write clunk next to it. I'm like, okay, that joke didn't work. Try it again. And sometimes I will keep it in. I'm like, you know what? Somebody's going to think that's funny. And so I'm going to keep it in there because I think it's funny.
Oh, yeah. I like to just say like, well, people are listening. That's why they're not laughing.
Yeah, that's right. They're like, oh,
they're listening.
yes.
It's going by very fast. They don't want to miss a word.
They're laughing deep, deep, deep down. Yeah. It's a soul laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's funny how, you know, like writing those characters, you know, you really... When I first started writing, that was something like all of my characters talked the same. I got that note a lot.
Oh, yeah.
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 But then somehow miraculously, I don't know if you just get to know more people or if you figure it out somehow that they start talking a little bit to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I can look back at the early stuff and go, I can tell what I was listening to at the time. Because it was like, oh, that's clearly like writer X. This writer is Z. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I wrote one of my favorite sketches of all time was a sketch that I wrote after I had I'd gone on this whole jag of reading Harold Pinter, the playwright.
Oh, okay.
And he has this really rhythmic way of writing, and everything is completely.
He loves the pause.
Yeah. And everything is subtext. Nobody's actually saying what they mean. It's all subtext. And it was a ridiculous sketch where it was prisoners of war who were going to be tortured by being forced to do the Macarena. It's the dumbest thing in the world. But
that old chestnut.
But the way that I wrote it was this like rat-a-tat-tat-tat, like the rhythm of it was so, and the characters were so weird, you know. But it was I had that rhythm so in my head from reading all this Pinter, you know. And I love that. I love it when you see something and you go, oh, that's the feeling that I want. That's what I want to create. Like that's the world that I want to sort of live in for this next project, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right with you. Like I love dialogue. It's my favorite thing in the world. And all the stuff I've listened to and done are all that sort of like it's Aaron Sorkin talks about the music.
Oh,
it's
God.
It's like you hear the rhythm and so whenever I talk to a director about the stuff, I said like, look, whatever you can do, whatever you want. You know, like it's your show to get the, but faster is better. Like my stuff does so much better if you keep the pace up, because if you slow down, then it's just like each line hangs there and it doesn't work because the counterpoint is coming. So you need to da 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 and keep it moving no matter what it is.
I agree.
I don't know if it may be me being pretentious, but like I've heard it both ways, and I can tell you, one works and the other doesn't.
Well, it's interesting. Like sometimes in film, really stylized things can feel too stiff, like unnatural, right?
Yeah.
But the rhythm you're talking about, like I don't care that Aaron Sorkin's stuff feels stylized to me.
No.
Right? It's like, it's such a song. It's such a beautiful, I love his stuff. And the rhythm of it is so important. And like this movie that I just did, I have a very rhythmic, like I think I'm a songwriter, right? Like that's really what I'm doing. And it would kill me, not all the time, but I had to find that happy medium between, because these are friends hanging out on a campground, you know. I had to find the happy rhythm between the rhythm of the language being perfect in that Aaron Sorkin way, but also having each of these people able to talk like they would normally talk, right? Like to be able to do their version of the character without killing the jokes.
Yes.
And it was really an interesting experiment, you know, to be able to have it sound really natural and really like it's falling out of their mouth at their cadence. But I think the thing is, I did notice that when it comes to jokes, I had to be more, I would next time be a little bit more, that was awesome. Now you need to say the line exactly as I wrote it.
Yeah. Like I do that too when I direct too. I'm like, okay, we got that. Yeah. We got that one.
And
now can you do it the way? Yeah, exactly. In the edit, you don't know. Like until you get to the end, you go, oh, you know what? They were right.
Yeah.
That is better. Like I'm actually going to use their first take. It turns out was better than where I directed them to do.
For sure. Sometimes it feels more natural and it's great. But then there's the couple things where I'm like, oh my God, why did you put man at the end of that line? Hey, yes. Man, like, oh no, you know. So
in this period then of stuff you were writing, what was the first thing that sort of got filmed?
Oh, you mean like professionally? Because like you can film anything.
Well, no, anything. I mean,
the first thing I did was, I think Patrick and I did 3 episodes of a little like mini web series thing called Now with Child.
Okay.
Because I was pregnant and we were laughing at like how terrible we were as parents. Like, you know, like
we're going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought it was hilarious that I was such a jackass and I was now going to be a mother and I was constantly saying things that were horrible. And Patrick was constantly trying to be like, you know, you can't say things like that. And, you know, so there were all these real things that happened to me when I was pregnant and I wrote these little episodes and we shot that little thing and that was really fun. And I pitched it to like, Nickelodeon was going to do an adult thing. Like, you know, so there was that. But then there was Dropping the Soap, which was really my first time doing. Yeah, Dropping the Soap was first. That was my first time doing a 10 episode. Like, wow. Yeah. And we didn't.
Half hour?
No, they were like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. That's more reasonable for 10 episodes.
Yeah. Because I'd never done anything like that before. And when we started, he was like, you know, can you write the first couple episodes? We want to do behind the scenes of a failing soap opera. And I was like, I love soap operas. I would love to write that. And then I met with all the actors and it was great. It was really fun. We had this lunch and I looked at all the people and like heard them talk and I was like, oh, well, you're clearly the writer.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are going to be enemies. You don't get to be best friends. Sorry. You're going to be enemies. You're closeted.
You're overqualified for the show. You're underqualified for the show.
Yes. And it was so fun to like really come up with those characters and storylines. And we wrote a couple episodes because they had money to shoot 2 episodes. So we did that.
Okay.
And then they got money to do like 2 more. So I wrote 2 more. And then I wrote like what I thought was probably, I don't know, season finale kind of. We wrote the 5th one. And then we shopped that around. And that's when Jane Lynch and Dan Bukatinsky and Lisa Kudrow and those people came on board as executive producers to sort of try to make it into a thing. Because at that time, web series were they were trying to figure out how to, you know,
everybody's trying to figure out this new World Wide Web video streaming thing.
Right. And how to, like, maybe Pepsi, it's your show sponsored by Pepsi. And then, you know, that kind of thing. Trying to get money so that people would get paid for doing these little web series, things like that.
So were you like in the room having those conversations or were you still just like the writer?
No, I was very lucky that I got to be in the room because it was... I was the one who was going to have to do that. And we actually worked together. Like Paul and Kate were the 2 leads on the show. And we really did create, like we went over everything together. I wrote everything, but then we would break story. We would talk about things. They would say what they liked and didn't like. And really though, for the trying to service what, you know, cause people were saying like, well, could you do it in, you know, could you do 10, 5-minute episodes? Could you do 2 half hours? Could you do, you know, would you be able to do this? Like, and I was responsible for being like, yes. And here's how we would do it. And now let me pitch it to you. And here's 6 30-minute episodes. And here's how we would do it if it was, so there was a lot of that in the process of trying to like sell it. And then ultimately what happened is we did get financing and we made it and we used the first 5 original scripts. And then I just wrote 5 more. And we did a 10 episode season and it was great. It's really fun.
Did you, on that 10th episode, were you sort of like, this could be the last one, so I need to do it? Or were you like, I'm going to put stuff in here that'll make it so they have to give us more?
It was a season finale for season 1. We had some ideas for what could happen in season 2, but it wasn't like we were looking for a season 2, Like if that were to happen, then great, but it had taken, that whole process, honestly, it took like 7 years.
Wow.
At least. That was in 2017, I think, that Jane won the Emmy.
I was going to say, I was trying to put my head in a timeline. So this is a post Friends Lisa Kudrow, but a during Glee Jane. Okay.
Yes. But that was it was in 2010 when we shot the originals.
Okay.
And then we shopped them and then we, went through the whole thing. So I wrote these things in 2010 and then we shot them. And then in 2017 is when we finally had released it. It took a long time. So could there have been a season 2? Maybe, but
everyone was so scattered by that point.
We were all a little bit like, it might be time to move on. And I had I had written and rewritten like 3 different versions of a whole season.
Yeah.
And they finally were like, let's just use the 5 originals. And I was like, okay. Like I had written every version of everything for that first season. So I was a little bit like, I don't know what I got left. But again, if it had happened, I would have been happy to do it. But yeah. It was so much fun. And, I got to see John Michael Higgins and Paul Whitten do this. It's one of my favorite episodes in that show where he comes on and he's a director of a commercial and our lead actor who is a soap actor, who does the looks and he gets 30-second close-ups where he tears up in every one. And he has a voice that he lowers specifically for his soap acting. And it was just a really fun, kind of a sketch, but it was a really, really fun scene. I got to see him do that. It's amazing. So that was my first.
And to hear your words.
Oh my God.
Being performed by,
by Jane
one of the
Lynch
greats.
and John Michael Higgins and all these great people. It was awesome. Yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So then does work beget work? Did it sort of you had done that so that opened other doors? Or is it still it's just starting from zero, hustling every single time?
It depends. So I love writing with other people, but anytime that you put created by or written by, and there's more than one person, it in a weird way, unless you're a permanent writing team partner with that person, what happens to you as an individual writer, even though you go, but wait, I've written all of these things. And unless you have written something totally by yourself, your agents can't do anything with it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. It's the worst. I learned that lesson the hard way because I was lazy enough to want to work with other people all the time.
Well, it's also fun.
It's fun, right?
Right.
But they couldn't show dropping the soap to anybody as an example of my writing, even though it's absolutely an example of my writing. And Paul and Kate would have absolutely said that. But, technically all our names are on it. And, it's teleplay by, but that doesn't mean anything. That just, unfortunately, that didn't really help my career, except that it was a wonderful experience and I got to work with all those people. And then, from there, like that, but then I really shifted into writing things by pulling up my big girl pants and writing things on my own because
so at that point it's writing things on your own to have sole credit, essentially, that's your creation that you made it, or were you already started thinking about, and I want to direct this?
Well, while I was on set with Dropping the Soap, Paul and I came up with this idea for the first short, Killing Vivian. And it was it was a true story because his dog was sick and he thought he was going to have to put his dog down. And I know that's not funny, but I was like, oh my God. He goes, I just wish I didn't have to be the one to do it, you know? And I'm an idiot. I grew up on a ranch and I'm like, I'll do it. And I was dead serious. I was like, I'll go to your house. I'll take your dog to the vet. Like, we'll handle it. Like, you'll be fine. Like, I'll do it. Like, you don't have to do it. And he was like, he looked at me like I was a monster. And I was like, oh, that's a really weird thing to say, isn't it? He's like, yeah. And so that was the premise for Killing Vivian, is like a guy whose dog starts to get sick and his best friend offers to kill it. And then when the dog starts to get better, the best friend like still wants to kill the dog. And that's the premise of the movie.
Okay.
But that was my first time directing. So that was what really made me go, oh, this feels good. I wrote this and I directed it and I get to make the jokes exactly the way I want. And that felt really good. And, you know, I had written on my own and I was getting to that point where I was like, I'm a little, I want to see what happens if I don't have that other person going, no, it should go this way. Like I kind of wanted to fail on my own to try to see what could come, you know, and I started to write on my own during that time. Like I wrote a movie after I co-wrote the movie with my first writing partner, Jennifer, and I've written a bunch of movies now since then.
Yeah. And so these have all been like, you sent them out, like they sort of like, you know, made the circuit.
Well, they did.
I mean, I know a lot of times just they go out and then it's just crickets.
Yeah, there was, I don't know that they ever went out.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that they ever went out. My agent didn't like. I don't know. He didn't like them.
This is your writing agent, right?
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be interesting to see what happens with this movie that I just directed because you know, because now I'm like, I do have scripts and I'm wondering like, and I love my scripts, you know, and there are other people that read them and they're like, this is fucking fantastic. Right. So it'll be interesting to see if it was just that guy who didn't like them and he just happened to be the guy I was dating at the time, or if it's really, if people are like, ooh, honey, no, you need to write new stuff. You know what I mean? It'll be interesting. But now it feels more like a job because even though I wasn't selling the scripts and I wasn't, you know, like I was writing them like it was my job. I mean, I that's where I've honed my craft. So now I've written enough movies now that it's not actually such a huge labor. If you give me a book and you go, what do you think? Could you make this into a movie? And I'll be like, I don't know, give me 3 weeks. And I can easily come back to you with a totally fleshed out outline that makes sense, that it's in movie structure and it's a great film. And I've done that enough now that I feel like, well, it's endless. I mean, I could make 100 movies and they would all be good. In my opinion, you know, maybe not the thing that the market needs, or maybe not the best thing I've ever written, but it was literally just the practice of that. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, it doesn't matter if you sold something, you will. Yeah. You know, there is somebody who wants to do my next like 4 movies, you know, and that's where you go, well, thank God I have 4 movies because, you know, I don't have to go and write 4 new movies. Like, he likes my voice. This is all stuff I've done. It's just a matter of it clicking at the right time. And it's like, even if that didn't happen, it still would have been practice so that if you say to me, hey, I want you to write a movie, I go, done. I know how to do that. And it feels good. There's so much rejection in any case, like, you know, so. And maybe that's not true for everybody, but that is true for most people, and even the most crazy successful. You know, I felt really good actually because there was this kid's book that I had adapted into a pitch, and I loved it. And you know, when you adapt it into a feature pitch, you basically have the whole movie. You have to pitch the whole movie. Oh yeah, right? So I had written the movie in my mind, and I loved it. And I've been wanting to do this kid's book forever. And it was all kismety. And I lined up with a producing friend of mine, and he had a relationship at Netflix, and he got us a meeting, and we went in, and I pitched the hell out of that movie, and I made him cry, and it just ticked every box of everything I wanted to do. And I was like, yes, this book is gonna get made. This is a movie. And then the feedback was that like they weren't sure that because And it was a book. I'll tell you. It was a book called Grace for President. It's about a little girl who runs for president at her
I think I've heard
local
of that.
elementary school. I love this book. And I obviously fleshed it out a bunch, but they were like, we're not sure if if elections really reach a global audience, and everything that Netflix does has to have a global audience. And I was like, elections are okay. Children aren't global. Okay. Like but it was obviously a pass, but it really was like, oh God, I don't know how to write for a global audience. And I kind of took it personally. And then I heard on the Smartlist podcast, like one of those guys, Will Arnett, or one of those guys talking about Netflix passing on something because it didn't have a global audience. And I was like, oh, it's not because Mandy Fabian is a novice. Like, it's because that's what they say sometimes. And so,
well, it's like they're not thinking about how it's going to play in Peoria. They're thinking about how it's going to play in, Beijing.
Yeah.
Because global audience.
Yeah.
So, I can kind of get that. If like a bunch of the countries they're trying to get to don't have elections, then I can see why they might pass.
Well, and think about how many writers and scripts and everything there are out there, right? Like their job is actually to find the reason to say no. I mean, they're looking for the yes, but really like there's so many probably pretty good projects. They can't do them all. They have to be really discerning. Like the thing that they pick almost has to be so inevitable for them. It doesn't really matter if it's a good project or not. It's like, it just has to be inevitable. I mean, I'm not saying it's not good, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know what you're saying.
There's such a different.
It's the right story at the right time.
Yeah, it's such a different, weird thing that, like, so for us, we just keep writing the good stories. Like, that's our job. It's not also then to sell it at Netflix. Like, that's lucky and great, and that happens to a lot of people. Some people it happens once and then it never happens again. Like, but. That's actually ultimately not our job. Our job is to keep creating this content and hopefully growing and servicing these ideas that come along. And some of them are like, that was just meant for me to write it and it sits in my computer. And then some are like, sat in my computer for 5 years and now it's a film,
That's right. And that's where we're going to stop the conversation for today. If you'd like to hear more of Mandy's voice, she's got her very own podcast. It's called The Mand Cave, hosted in collaboration with her friend, Mandy Kaplan. You'll find it wherever the finest podcasts are found. Thanks so much for listening. This has been the next chapter in the Curiosity Codex, but there are still many pages left to decipher. We're part of the True Story FM family of podcasts. Find out more about us at truestory.fm. Our theme music is Intrusion by Severed Personality, a.k.a. Kevin MacLeod. The voice of the Codex is Vicky Hall. Find her on the web at vickyhall.squarespace.com. And my name is Kyle Olson.
The Codex is closed. For now.